We see the headlines about climate change all the time, right? These huge global numbers. But what does it really look like for the people on the front lines? I mean, especially for those living in some of the most remote and fragile places on Earth. Well, today we're going to go hyperlocal. We're breaking down a really fascinating study that maps out climate vulnerability, literally village by village, deep in the Kashmir Himalaya.
Okay, so here's our game plan for today. First up, we'll set the scene right on the climate front line. Then we're going to zoom right into our case study, a place called Kupwara. After that, we'll get into how scientists actually measure what matters here, check out the study's pretty eye-opening maps, and then, and this is the important part, see how all this data can actually be turned into action.
So, let's talk about why this matters so much. Mountain communities, especially in these super fragile regions like the Himalayas, are on the absolute front line of climate change. I mean, their livelihoods are often hanging by a thread. Think about it. Their whole life is built on agriculture that is incredibly sensitive to even the smallest shifts in weather. So a big, broad, global analysis, it just doesn't work here. To really get the story, you've got to go local.
And this is where our story takes place, the Kupwara district. I mean, just look at this image. You can really see just how rugged and remote the terrain is. This is a place where life is completely tied to the land, and where climate change isn't some far-off threat on the news. No, for them, it's happening right here, right now.
And that right there brings us to the huge challenge, doesn't it? In a place this vast, with limited resources, how can policymakers possibly know where to even start? Where do you focus your efforts? How do you find the exact communities that need the most help? This is the precise puzzle these researchers wanted to solve. So to solve that puzzle, the study does something really smart. It zooms way, way in, focusing on this one district, Kupwara, as a kind of micro-level case study. And it's this focus that lets them get a super detailed, super real picture of what's actually going on. And Kupwara, it turns out to be the perfect place for a study like this. We're talking about an area with over 870,000 people, where pretty much everyone relies on agriculture to get by. But then you look at the challenges. You've got these steep slopes, farmland that's all broken up, and really limited infrastructure and tech. It's basically a perfect storm for vulnerability. Okay, so this brings up a big question. How do you actually measure something as complex as vulnerability, right? It's not as simple as just tracking rainfall. It's this whole mix of social, economic, and even ecological factors that all add up to determine how well a community can bounce back when things get tough. And the key concept the researchers use is something they call inherent vulnerability. Basically, this is all about the built-in conditions. It's a community's starting point. It's their existing strengths and weaknesses before a flood or a drought or any other climate disaster even hits. Let's break this down. Think of it like two people caught in a sudden rainstorm. Their vulnerability is decided by two kind of opposing forces. On one side, you've got sensitivity. These are all the things that make you more likely to get soaked, like, say, you forgot your coat. In this study, that's like being totally dependent on rain-fed agriculture. But then on the other side, you have adaptive capacity. This is your umbrella. These are the tools that help you cope, like high literacy rates so you can read weather forecasts, or good roads to get your produce to market even if local conditions are bad.
So how did they put all this together? Well, the researchers basically became data detectives. They pulled in satellite imagery, census data, all kinds of local stats. They took 15 different indicators. We're talking everything from literacy rates to the amount of forest cover, and they crunched all those numbers for 356 different villages. And the goal? To create one single powerful vulnerability score for every single one of them. So, after all that incredible data crunching, what did they actually find? This, my friends, is where the story gets really powerful. Let's dig into the results.
Okay, the single most stunning result is this right here. Over 90%. I'm going to say that again. More than 9 out of 10 villages in the entire district are facing moderate to high vulnerability to climate change. Just let that sink in for a moment. This isn't some fringe issue affecting a few places. It's the overwhelming reality for almost everyone there.
And this chart here gives us an even clearer picture of what that 90% really means. You can see that huge bar in the middle. That's 211 villages sitting in the moderate vulnerability category. Then, right next to it, you've got another 118 villages in the high category. And then look at the top. That small but absolutely critical group of 7 villages are rated as very high.
Now, these two maps show the two sides of that vulnerability coin we were just talking about. On the left, That's sensitivity. See all those red and orange hotspots? Those are the areas with higher risk factors, things like high population density or a lot of landless workers. Then on the right, you've got adaptive capacity. Here, the greener the area, the more resilient it is, probably because of things like better education or infrastructure.
Okay, so what happens when you combine those two opposing forces, all the risk factors and all the coping abilities? Well, you get this. This is the final inherent vulnerability map. And honestly, this is the key takeaway of the entire study. Those red and orange hotspots, they show you exactly which villages are the most at risk. It's like a visual guide to climate inequality.
But here's the most crucial point, really. This isn't just a cool academic exercise. A map like this is an incredibly powerful tool. It takes all of that complex data and transforms it into a clear, easy-to-understand roadmap for action. And the research doesn't just tell us where the problems are, it actually tells us why. The data points a really clear finger at a few key drivers. The most vulnerable places are consistently the ones struggling with low literacy, poor road infrastructure, and very limited access to financial support, like credit for farmers. And once you know that, it leads you directly to a clear and practical roadmap. It points to smart, targeted investments. We're talking about things like investing in climate-resilient farming, like drought-resistant crops, strengthening farmer cooperatives, and, critically, improving access to the basics: education, healthcare, roads, and financial credit. This is how you literally build resilience from the ground up.
And this really gets to the heart of the whole thing. As the researchers themselves put it, these detailed micro-level assessments are absolutely essential. Why? Because they let us move beyond just guesswork. They allow us to make sure that limited resources are sent exactly where they will do the most good. No more flying blind.
So the data is here, the map is drawn, the roadmap is clear. This study proves that we have the tools to identify the most vulnerable with incredible precision. The big question that remains, well, it's no longer about the science, it's about action. Will this knowledge actually be used to build a more resilient and just future for the communities living right on the front lines? That's the question we're left with.